that leads us into our third series that we were going to talk about today. And that is the most pie in the sky. It's the one that I think was the least planned
Hmm.
by Sutter from the beginning. And this is the one where we have to have a ton of huge caveats from the beginning. And I think you and I agree in our interpretation and our, I guess, preferences. Jax Teller is dead,
Definitely.
and he should be
Hopefully.
left dead.
Hopefully.
Right,
Bro, that's the biggest discussion I've ever had because of all my YouTube videos.
right.
I just made a video about exactly this topic with three scenarios, how an eighth season could have happened back in the days, not now, like
Hmm.
directly after season seven. Like one scenario is Jack survived, one scenario is like, yeah, he's dead, but he gets like flashback episodes or something like that. And yeah, there were a lot of scenarios. You can watch the video if you're interested. So I won't talk about that too much. But below that video, there were so many guys that said Jax is dead, and we can't do an eighth season now because in Mayans MC they talked about his dad, and we know he's dead, and stuff like that. And the people don't really understood that I was talking about an eighth season when he maybe survived directly after the seventh season.
Hmm.
That's all way before Mayans MC. The guys, nobody like have has a timeline in mind. So if Jack survived and we would get content of this, that would not be content that happened after Mayans MC. That's really important to notice.
That's really interesting to me too, because we actually went in different directions here.
Okay.
So let me see if we can let me see if I can sway you slightly. Because but I back to the caveats. When you have the actor who played Jax coming out and
Yeah.
getting fans all excited and like teasing a possibility of returning as that character, we've got to at least explore some possible scenarios
Yeah.
of how he could possibly come back somehow. And I think that not showing us a body in the season 7 finale was absolutely intentional. I
Yeah, that's
don't
true.
I don't think they intended for Jax to survive or to continue the story, but I do think that they intentionally left like a crack in the door open just in case, let's be real, there was money to be made and Charlie was interested in bringing him back.
That's exactly what I've always telling with all the spin-offs. Everyone says there will be no first nine, there will be no Jack surviving because all the Disney and network stuff that happens and Kurt is out. But at the end, they are all businesses and they want to make the most money. And if there are so many fans that want to watch that, they are willing to pay like monthly rates for the streaming stuff. They will kind of do something to earn that money. And yeah, that's the point. That's like the Hollywood backdoor that is left open with the season seven final.
Exactly. I mean, I mentioned Fast and Furious earlier. They're constantly coming up with ways to bring characters back from the dead because
Yeah,
there's still money to be made.
but please don't do it like that on Sons of Anarchy,
Right.
please. Then
Exactly.
I'm out. Then I'm deleting all the Sons of Anarchy pages, to be honest.
Yeah. So here's the scenario that I came up with to flesh it out a little bit. You were talking as if it was taking place immediately after season 7 ended,
Mm,
prior to Mayans and all of that. I'm thinking if it was to be made now.
okay, but how?
Well, here's what I'm going to try. We're led to believe that he hit that semi truck head on.
Mm,
Hence, you know, the scene and the blood on the pavement that we got. But let's just say maybe, and I've seen this idea out there that he saw like a vision of Tara or something, or maybe he saw a vision of his boys or something like right before he hit the semi.
mm.
And let's say maybe he swerved, maybe the semi swerved, maybe it wasn't a head-on collision, maybe he just went down on the side of the road. He's still going to be bleeding. He's still going to have had a major motorcycle accident.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. He was
Hence,
like fast
yeah,
and no helmet, and
Exactly. Hence the blood on the road. Like you can you can still not completely cheapen your ending and
Hmm.
still have a fairly vague, plausible ability for him to have somehow survived.
Yeah.
Okay. He just went on an absolute killing spree prior to that. He's being chased by like a million cop cars. Best case scenario, he's in prison forever if
Yeah.
he doesn't die on the pavement. There's no way that the club doesn't find out that he's still alive if he's in prison. And in Mayans, we have multiple mentions of a dead Jax Teller. So how do you explain all that away? What about Witsec? New identity, immunity, government protection. They let people in his old life believe that he died in that accident, and he gets a new life for cooperating with law enforcement, which doesn't sound like the outlaw way.
Hmm.
But how many times did Jax actually use law enforcement to get what he wanted?
Pretty often, but never in like kind of like a red way.
True, but what he wanted most in that moment was for his sons to grow up away from Charming,
Hmm.
not having the life that he had, and he wanted his club to be on the best path forward with as little bloodshed as possible. Those were what he wanted most in this moment, and he fully intended to make it his literal last thing that he ever did.
But what do you think? How would all of that came together? Because when he's working for the law enforcement, it would have at least some negative impact on the club. I mean, he could live a life with his boys, maybe with Wendy, far away from all of that. Even it's that like not really likely because we saw Wendy in Mayans, and then maybe that would be like different, but it must have a negative impact on the club, and that's not really something I would say is in Jack's mind. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. Um, I don't think that he would intend for him to go live with them
Hmm.
in this like fictional fairy tale scenario in Witsec. We know that he had some major dealings and knows a lot about multiple very very big fish, let's say,
Yeah.
for law enforcement. We know the Irish are still selling and running guns with the Mayans, so he didn't flip on the Irish. We know he wouldn't have flipped on his own club. What about Pope Industries?
I mean, he kinda eliminated this in like season 7.
He eliminated Marks as the head of it,
Yeah,
but
there's always another one to come. That's true.
right. Like, what if he was able to provide sufficient evidence on the criminal enterprise side of Pope Industries? Because if we remember, Pope Industries had a very large, successful business venture that was on the up and up and
Hmm.
built it through just completely sleazy, awful gangster shit on the criminal side. And that was how Pope made his name and made his thing. And, Marx took it over. And there's going to be somebody who takes it over after that. Let's just say, because that's the only scenario I could come up with. Because what Jax wanted, he wanted his sons away from
Hmm.
the life and away from him because he felt like he would poison them. He wanted safety. He wanted the club to be intact. He wanted to be the fall
Yeah.
guy. And this is one way for him to be the fall guy and still have a pulse.
Hmm. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's just a thought. And then it brings him back, not in a season 8,
Hmm.
but instead, he's coming back in the sequel series.
Yeah, that what I thought too about the sequel, but not really like it really coming back. I more thought like coming back in like flashbacks or like almost like a ghost, not being like weird now, but
Oh,
you know
that's
what I
actually
mean?
interesting.
Like
Yeah,
we talked earlier about the psychological stuff with Abel. And what if like the book that JT wrote was to Jax? Maybe are those flashback or ghost-like moments for Abel? Like he's talking to his father, and we really have like Charlie Hunnam playing that as Jax, and they are talking, but he's not really there. You know what I mean?
that's interesting. I hadn't
That's
given
what
that
I thought.
any.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that because see, what I was thinking was he's been in Witsec, right? He's on the other side of the country, whatever. But we
Hmm.
have the internet now, and every once in a while, he checks in on like the news around Charming, and one particular headline comes his way, and he recognizes his son's name
Yeah.
in an incident that happens. So now
True.
everything he wanted, them being away from Charming, them being away from the club being on the up and up, everything he did this for is gone. It all came
Hmm.
crumbling. It failed.
And then he goes back. You mean?
Yeah, he has no he would not be able to stay hidden in
Yeah.
some secluded little, terrible life that he's made for himself and his self-loathing because that's what he did in
Hmm.
this scenario, right? Like he's living off of, TV dinners and has rats in his apartment in Rhode Island. Like he hates himself, but he's thinking that he did it to save his kids.
Yeah.
And then he finds out his kids are right back in Charming where he didn't want them. So he leaves, obviously, goes AWOL on the program. He's back in Charming and, how quick he can travel there.
Yeah.
And he becomes a supportive character in the story about the sons.
But do you think that like he will be really like going back and be present, or like going back and don't revealing himself to the people and trying to like manipulate from the outside?
That's really interesting because I think you have the opportunity to do both
Yeah,
in that
maybe.
scenario. I think you maybe start him as a silent participant off the radar,
Mm.
and then maybe you have some really big like tension building moment
Then he gets like
where
revealed.
where his he's revealed, and maybe it's like maybe you get a peek,
Yeah.
right? Like maybe he's discovered by somebody and then they have to keep it a secret,
Mm.
and then maybe the secret starts to spread just a teeny tiny bit, but then something huge happens and he's got to just say fuck it
Yeah. Then
and
it's
like
like a
walks.
wildfire.
Yep, and he just like walks straight up into a scenario, and he's just like standing right in front of whoever the main foil is, and in whatever
Mm.
moment that you've built, like, and that's the dramatic reveal, and it's like, oh shit, it's
Yeah.
one of those kind of things. I don't. It's not my favorite thing. Let me be very clear, but it was the only thing that I could come up with in which you could tell me he survived and tell me he's stayed away for this long
Yeah.
in any kind of a compelling way that doesn't completely ruin what happened in the first 7 seasons of Sons or ruin the character or just make it a just shameless, awful money grab, terrible scenario.
Mm. I think it's a pretty hard thing to say, but I'm sure that won't be the way they would go with all of that. I mean, if we go back
I
to the
agree.
root to the root of all the rumors, it's like the interview from the show Shantaram where Charlie like talked about it, and
Mm-hmm.
then some little social media clips, like in Reaper reviews, he talked about it again. And for me, especially on the Reaper reviews clip, it sounded a little bit more like the stuff that the Harry Potter guys did with the reunion.
Yeah.
That's like something that's really likely. So he said, I think like maybe the whole crew will come together again or something like that. And that for me sounds really like a reunion stuff. And it would be cool, in my opinion, if they do like the same thing Harry Potter did with their reunion for Sons of Anarchy, like reviewing some old moments, talking about the behind the scenes stuff, showing stuff that has never been seen from the fans, like if it comes to behind the scenes. And maybe that can be like leaving the door open for taking part as Jax Teller in a sequel that maybe comes after that when we have more promotion for the franchise again through a reunion show like that.
I completely agree. The thing that always made the most sense when as soon as he opened his mouth was a reunion show,
Yeah.
right? The thing that made it a fun thought exercise, at least, the way it was kind of like spun to be like reprising the role
Mm.
or like coming back as Jax.
Yeah,
And
that
like,
was what was a little bit weird about all of that, in my opinion.
yeah, like a reunion show is he's Charlie Hunnam and he's going to come on
Yeah,
and talk about playing Jax, not actually, they're not going to get into costume and like get into character to do the interviews.
yeah, that's what confuses me about all of that.
Yeah, so it does again. It leaves a sliver of like, and I'm sure some of it is just clickbait. Let's be honest. Um,
Yeah, obviously.
and I would watch the shit out of a reunion show. I would. I thought it made for just a fun thought exercise of like, okay, one of the things that I like to do on the podcast is just these like kind of off the wall what ifs. This was a
Yeah.
what if.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, and that's an absolutely interesting thought, especially how we like formed it now.
Oh, so how do we do? Any other thoughts that you had on a potential Jax? Like, what about a season 8?
I'm pretty sure there won't be a season 8.
I agree.
I had one scenario that is, for me personally, pretty interesting too, but that will never happen and that goes completely in like a different direction again. I talked about that in my video last week too. It was like a scenario that I got the idea from The Walking Dead a little bit. Like in The Walking Dead, I don't know if you saw the show. At the beginning, the main character, Rick Grimes, like woke up from a coma. And then all the zombie stuff happens. And what I was thinking about is what if Jax Teller had like a really hard motorcycle crash, but not the one in season 7, like way before season 1 started. And Jax Teller was in a coma, and everything we saw in the show was like just him processing the coma, his mind processing the coma. And then he wakes up and everything is totally different. Like Tara never came back. Wendy is no junkie. She raised Abel like 1 or 2 years. Maybe the stuff with Gemma and Clay is not like we saw it in the show, and everything is different. And we see how he deals like with the problem and the struggles of his memories of his fantasy that he had in the coma, or his dream, better said, and the reality, because there are so many false memories for him. And that would be like a really like mindfuck kind of show that would absolutely be interesting, in my opinion. It goes like in the direction of Christopher Nolan movies for me, and it would be definitely interesting, but it wouldn't fit like in the Sons of Anarchy universe.
I agree. I don't think it fits in the universe, but I think it is an interesting concept of a show. Like, imagine that's happening.
Yeah,
Then,
everything is possible, man.
oh, I
It's
know,
Hollywood.
I know, but he starts running into scenarios
Yeah.
like not all of them because you obviously don't want to just like rewrite the same show, but
Mhm.
like you get hints of deja vu moments
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where he's like, "Oh shit, we can't do that," and he almost like overreacts to things and take goes the opposite direction of what he went before because he knows that that was a huge mistake in his like dream
Yeah,
world.
exactly. And then maybe he has the possibility to really change the club in the right direction he always wanted, but never succeeded.
But then, of course, it has to go wrong.
Yeah, because it's a show. And we need a dramatic final at the end.
Exactly.
That's one of the biggest problems that I had in my video about season 8. Everything we can do to make a season 8 or let Jack survive or whatever he's coming back, how do we end it that it really feels final and it's not disappointing?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also like I could understand people who and I think this was one of the scenarios in your video too, so I won't give away too much of what you said. But like I can understand people also having some interest in just like the continuation of SAMCRO without Jax.
Definitely.
I personally, I don't think they had the characters for that.
I think they had.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think there's a reason that if you do go on social media
Hmm.
and look up anything on Sons of Anarchy, it's like 99% Jax, right? Like it's like Jax carried the show
Yeah.
in a really, really big way. And I just don't think that they had anyone. I think Jax was just so unique in a main character for this club and for this show and for this series. I don't think that you could have just like taken that and put it on one of the existing members and then be able to hold it up.
If it comes to the characters and the fan base and who's like loved the
Mm-hmm.
most and seen the most, after Jax, we definitely have OP, but he's dead. So
Yeah,
there's no possibility for him to carry anything.
right.
But I think the characters of Chips or Tig and especially the actors would definitely have the potential to carry like one or two more seasons.
I think that they were best in the roles that they had.
Yeah.
And the way, and this literally just popped into my head this morning after watching your video again.
Mm.
It was, in my mind, the way that that could have potentially been most successful is if upon Jax's exit, you introduced a new character
Mm.
that is just something fresh, new, and intriguing for us to follow and learn about.
Like a little bit the story like from Easy from Mayans, like
Yeah,
someone
very
coming
much.
in as a prospect and
Yep.
yeah, getting like to the president or VP status pretty fast and dramatic.
Well, yeah, and he doesn't even have to have that kind of like rise in the club necessarily because I think Tig and Chibs they can be their role within the club
Yeah,
for a while.
but
I just
not in the show. I get
right,
what you mean. They are the
right,
main characters in the club, but not the main characters in the show.
right.
Mm.
Exactly. I think they were best being support characters with main arcs, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. Like
yeah, I agree.
even when they had their big arcs, it was still a an arc that was happening alongside what Jax was doing. And I think you needed that Jax figure for those to truly shine the way that they did. I personally just think you'd have a decline in quality if you were just like, okay, well, Chibs is the new Jax now. And it's like, well, we already know a lot about Chibs,
Mm.
and we've kind of already seen him have an arc alongside our other arc. How are you going to somehow like trump up Chibs
Yeah,
and make him even more compelling and more interesting now? He's already done all of his
yeah.
things. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that just would be it'd be asking a lot, not of the actor, like he's fully capable in
Mm.
that way, but you're asking a lot of the character
Yeah, that's
after
true.
what it's already been through. So that's where I was like, if you could introduce somebody, and maybe it's somebody that is familiar to us in some way, like I don't even know what that would be, but like somebody's got some kind of tie to the club, and they come in as a prospect, as you mentioned, and they've got a tie somehow to a family somewhere somehow. I don't know,
Mm.
but like some kind of familiar thread that could then have their own journey and Chibs and even Tig could like help guide them on that journey
But I think what would be definitely interesting, maybe not on Chips, because we know a lot of Chips' backstory and
so
we have
much.
seen like parts of it because all of the Ireland,
Hmm.
Scotland stuff. But like for guys like Happy or Tick, there's a lot we know about them, but we only got teased, especially Tick. There's so much behind this character that we have never seen, and that's really interesting. Exactly like on Happy, and that could like kind of get the bridge a little bit to Mayans MC and everything that happens there. But a character that not many people think about, but I think had big potential for more screen time was Red Boy.
It's really funny you mentioned that because I give him a big role in the fan fiction, but I agree with you. I think it also depends on what your goal of the show is.
Hmm.
If your goal is to bridge from Suns to Mayans,
Yeah,
then I think you're absolutely right.
yeah,
Chibs, Tig, Happy, like they can carry that with not a lot of issue because you don't have to have a super long arc planned.
exactly. Yeah,
But if your plan is to essentially kick off what would basically be another like 7 season type of a series, essentially starting your sequel there
yeah.
or
That
whatever,
wouldn't be possible with the characters.
yeah,
That's yeah, clear
yeah,
thing.
you need something new to bring to the table to follow their journey, I think.
But then I say better do a spin-off.
Yeah,
That's not how the show is supposed to continue, in my opinion.
yeah,
When
I
they
agree.
when they would have done an eighth season, then only like really one season, maybe two,
Yeah.
maybe one season where they like yeah, show a little bit more about the characters we haven't seen much about yet, and exactly like guys like Red Boy, maybe how he becomes full member and his arc a little bit, and then second season like how it all really ends, like fading out into
Hmm.
Mayan's MC a little bit, and then Sons of Anarchy's done.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only thing that could potentially have legs in the timeline just doesn't quite fit
Mm.
is Opie's son.
Yeah,
He's just not quite old enough.
yeah, true.
But if he was, right?
Then it
Like
would be really, really interesting thought. Yeah.
yeah, like if he became a prospect and then you make him the new Jax or whatever, like that could be something very very compelling. I just don't
Mm,
think he's quite old enough because he's what? He's probably like 6 or 7 in season 1.
maybe, yeah.
So he's maybe 15 by the time it all ends.
I think that is something that can only happen like in the timeline way after my NCMC.
Right, like you can't bring a 15-year-old into Sons of Anarchy. But
Yeah.
if he was say 13 in season 1 and he's, 18, 19, 20 when it all ends,
Mm.
then you've got something. But
But then
we don't
I
have
would
the
say we would have seen more of him in the original
I
show
agree.
too. When
Yeah,
he's like that age, then they would have made a real character of him. Now he wasn't really a character. I don't know if he like said one real sentence in the whole show.
exactly. And I think you kind of need that. Right?
Yeah.
Like I think the new whoever that new mantle was going to go to, it would have to just be somebody that like we have a reason to care about them from the jump, but that we
Mm.
don't really know.
Yeah.
And so that's why his boy, came to mind as a potential there. We've already kind of seen enough from Rat Boy to kind of disqualify him, in my opinion, on that.
Maybe, yeah.
So like to me, the only way that scenario works is if it's somebody we don't know really anything about, but like we recognize a name
Mm. Yeah.
or we like recognize
A
a
connection
family
to
tie.
yeah, a
Exactly.
connection
Yep.
to someone else of the club or of someone in Charming or stuff like
Right.
that.
Right. It's somebody that we connect to, so we're like, "Oh, I want to root for them because of their connection to X, but
Mm.
I don't know who this person actually is."
Yeah,
And that's the intrigue.
yeah, yeah.
But that's probably why we didn't get it.
Maybe.
And it was always intended to be 7 seasons. That's why I think season 7 was so rushed.
At the end, I have to say it's good how it ended. It's a final ending. I
Yeah.
hope Jax is dead and they don't bring him back. Please do a
I
reunion
agree
show.
with
That
you.
would be absolutely sick, and everyone would watch that, and we all have good content about that.
Hell yes.
But please don't bring back Jax.
Yeah.
If you do, if anyone hears that ever from like the network or Kurt Sutter or someone else, if you do bring him back, then only like for the sequel in like how I mentioned with like Abel maybe talking in a ghosty way or something, but don't bring back Jax alive, please.
Don't ruin what you already built.
Yes, exactly.
I think we did pretty good.
Yes,
I think we did well. We've got
same for
3
me.
series that we could conceivably have, 2 that we would prefer, and And if anyone at the networks want to hire us once this strike is over to help guide these stories, our phone lines are open.
Definitely. We would also take a place in the cast, and yeah, we could do like everything.
I would totally be down.
I can bring bikes and no problem.
I'm totally down for it. The only downside that I have is I don't totally fit the aesthetic of the original cast. Those dudes were huge.
Yeah.
They were giants. I heard Theo Rossi say on Reaper Reviews that he's 5'10".
Yeah.
And Juice looks like a tiny little boy.
The good thing is, I definitely know I'm way bigger than Theo. I met him in 2019 here on a Comic Con, and I remember that I was looking a little bit down. But Ryan was absolutely a giant. He was so big, really.
Monsters, just huge human beings. I am not. I'm a very small human being. So you're gonna have to write my character as like some little dude that's like really crazy or
like
something. Yeah, just like the only way somebody my size gets into that world is they have to have some really, really, really scary demons.
Yeah. Do you mean Coco?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would have to be a Coco type character for me to play, just because I'm so short. But I'd do it. I can ride. We can do that. Anyway, dude, seriously, thank you for coming on the podcast. This was a ton of fun.
My pleasure. Same for me.
You're welcome back anytime. And for now, plug literally anything that you want to plug.
Yeah. At the end, if you're just interested in Sons of Anarchy stuff, you can check out my pages if you haven't. Leave a comment on some of the YouTube videos and let me know about your thoughts on the spin-offs. I have videos about pretty much all of we talked yet. And then I'm interested to read what you guys say, how maybe the Sons of Anarchy universe could continue. And if you're interested in Harley Davidson content or myself, feel free to check out my personal Instagram. And definitely consider about the Patreon membership for the Belated Binge podcast, because you definitely need to read his fanfiction.
I agree. And there's going to be links to all of those in the show notes that I'll put. I'd also love to hear your opinions on these scenarios and these different shows. You can leave a voicemail on my website, belatedbinge.com. There's a leave a voicemail icon right there on the right-hand side of the screen, and links to everything else from there, social, Patreon, and all of that. Like I said, all links will be in the show notes. As always, thanks for joining us. And remember, life is short. Buy the motorcycle. When you do, wear a helmet. Dress for a slide, not the ride. And be sure to bring Belated Binge along for that ride.